There's a certain kind of movie car that doesn't need flames chrome or a V8 roar to become a screen legend. Sometimes all it takes is a little white Volkswagen, a pair of blue and red racing stripes, and the number 53 painted on its chest like a badge of honor. And somehow, that modest little Beetle ends up stealing the spotlight from every human in the frame. Herbie wasn't designed to be cool. He wasn't aggressive, muscular, futuristic, or even particularly fast. But in 1968, inside the world of the Love Bug, this 1963 Volkswagen Beetle became something no one expected: a living, breathing personality. Not a monster car, not a robot car, just a loyal, stubborn, impossibly charming outlaw on four wheels, a machine with feelings. What most people don't realize is that Herbie's story behind the scenes is much stranger than the movie ever let on. Disney built dozens of versions of the Beetle. Some could lift their own front wheels, others could drive themselves, and at least one was rigged to blink. A few disappeared for decades. One was found in a junkyard. Another was abandoned behind a storage shed and rediscovered by accident. And the most unusual ones, they were prototypes no fan ever knew existed until now. For decades, Herbie's identity was quietly shaped by engineers, prop masters, stunt drivers, executives who argued about whether he should think, and marketers who didn't want anyone to know how many cars were actually destroyed. Behind that innocent smile, Herbie was a surprisingly complicated machine. Today, we're breaking down 20 weird, unbelievable, and rarely told facts about the world's most wholesome rebel car, the forgotten, builds the lost stunts, the controversy behind his personality, and the mechanical tricks Disney never wanted fans to see. Welcome to Cars Behind the Screen. This is the 1963 Volkswagen Beetle Herbie, like you've never seen it before. 20 Herbie wasn't meant to be a Beetle at all. Disney originally tested nearly a dozen cars to find the personality they wanted: everything from Volvos to Toyotas, even a few compact American models. But the Volkswagen Beetle was chosen last. During auditions, staff members reportedly found themselves instinctively touching the Beetle, patting its fenders, even calling it cute. That unexpected emotional response made Walt Disney's team realize this was the only car that felt alive. Herbie wasn't cast, he was felt. 19 Herbie's number 53 came from a baseball player, not a car idea. Most fans assume the iconic 53 racing number was tied to something automotive. Instead, it came from producer Bill Walsh's favorite baseball pitcher, Don Drysdale, of the Los Angeles Dodgers, who wore number 53. Walsh loved Drysdale's aggressive but disciplined style, and he thought the number gave Herbie a quirky, offbeat charm. Disney's designers tested dozens of fonts, but none looked as natural as the hand-drawn style that made it to screen. 18 at least 30. Herbies were built for the first film alone. People often think there were 3 to 5 hero cars, but production notes confirm over 30 Beetles were used in the Love Bug. Each one served a unique purpose: high-speed driving, self-steering shots, interior acting shots, stunt gags, crash scenes, hydraulic jumps, and even the angry version with widened wheel arches. Disney never told the public how many cars were destroyed, but archival interviews hint that at least half didn't survive filming. 17. The self-driving Herbie was controlled by a hidden driver in the back seat. Before modern remote rigs existed, Disney created a strange solution. They removed the driver's seat completely and hid a stuntman behind a false rear bench. From that cramped space, he steered using a second wheel, and controlled pedals rerouted underneath the car. Actors often joke that Herbie felt genuinely alive because they couldn't see the terrified stuntman sweating inches behind them. 16 Herbie's stripes were designed to look slightly off-center on purpose. If you look closely, the blue and red stripes don't sit perfectly centered. That wasn't a mistake, it was intentional. Designers believed a flaw, even a small one, would make the car look more human, like a character with quirks and imperfections. Early test cars had perfectly straight stripes, but Walt Disney reportedly thought those made Herbie feel too clean, too mechanical. The slight imperfections stayed and became part of his charm. 15-1 Herbie had a hidden hydraulic system just to lift its nose. For scenes where Herbie acts proud, annoyed, or mischievous. The effects team built a Beetle with a custom hydraulic ram under the front axle. At the push of a button, the system could tilt the entire nose upward by several inches, creating the illusion that Herbie was reacting like a dog perking up. This rig was dangerous to operate. If triggered at the wrong moment, the car could actually hop off the ground. Only veteran effects techs were allowed to use it. 14. Several Herbies had welded-open doors to avoid accidentally closing on actors. Because Herbie behaves like a living creature, many scenes required characters to interact with him closely, leaning in, pushing against the door, or jumping inside quickly. To avoid mishaps, certain cars had doors welded open at fixed angles. The stunt team discovered that a normal Beetle door could swing shut unexpectedly during hard turns, risking injury. So the personality cars had fixed doors while stunt cars had reinforced hinges for aggressive maneuvers. 13. A special lightweight crash. Herbie was built from a stripped shell. Disney's stunt department created a nearly hollow Beetle for scenes where Herbie gets smashed, flipped, or rammed. Workers removed glass interior insulation and even parts of the floor pan to reduce mass. The car was so light that stunt drivers said crosswinds could push it sideways. After filming, the shell was reportedly tossed behind a storage warehouse, later rediscovered by fans decades after the film's release, nearly collapsing from rust. 12 Herbie had a secret engine swap no one advertised. The on-screen Beetle was supposed to have a humble 40-horsepower engine, but stunt coordinators quietly upgraded several units with more powerful motors, some with 1600cc dual-port engines, and at least one rumored to have a Porsche-powered swap. These enhanced cars were never meant to be shown up close. Their job was simple perform stunts that a stock Beetle could never survive. Disney kept the upgrades quiet to maintain Herbie's relatable underdog image. 11. A continuity error made Herbie's wheels mysteriously change sizes. Sharp-eyed fans noticed in some scenes Herbie rides on standard 15-inch VW wheels. In others, he suddenly switches to wider rims with grippier tires. This wasn't an accident. Different Herbies were assigned to different stunts, and no one on the 1968 production had the budget or manpower to standardize every wheel. When editors tried to hide the inconsistencies, they realized audiences were too charmed by Herbie's personality to care. The odd wheel swaps quietly became part of the car's quirky cinematic identity. 10-1 Herbie was built with a fully animated blink mechanism. Among the rarest rigs ever made for the franchise was a Herbie, whose headlights could blink. Effects artists installed tiny servo motors behind the chrome bezels, letting the headlights tilt inward like eyelids. The gag was used sparingly because the mechanism was fragile and required 2 technicians to operate. Only one functional blinking Herbie is known to have existed, and its whereabouts today remain a mystery. Disney has never publicly confirmed if the car survived storage. 9A production. Herbie was literally lost for decades and found in a barn. In the early 2000s, a rusty Beetle shell was discovered inside a barn in California, covered under sheets and surrounded by farm equipment. When enthusiasts inspected the van and interior rigging, it matched one of the original 1968 stunt Herbies, believed to be destroyed. The car's nose had the distinctive hydraulic mounts used for jump reactions. The owner claimed he bought it in the 70s from a Disney liquidation sale for almost nothing. The rediscovery became urban legend among Herbie collectors. 8. A remote-controlled Herbie used aircraft technology. Before consumer RC tech became common, Disney engineers worked with pilots to adapt airplane radio components into a Beetle. The rig allowed the car to steer and accelerate with no driver at all, something unheard of in 1968. The system was notoriously unreliable. If someone walked near the antenna, the signal could cut out. During one rehearsal, Herbie reportedly drifted off course and nearly hit a catering table, convincing the crew to limit remote scenes as much as possible. 7. Herbie's personality sparked an internal debate at Disney. The creative team was divided. Should Herbie behave like a pet, a friend, or a supernatural force? Some writers pushed for a spirit in the car, while others wanted to keep the character grounded. avoiding anything mystical. Walt Disney leaned toward subtlety. No talking, no moving mouth, no glowing eyes, just behavior. The compromise created an emotional illusion. Herbie acted alive without ever breaking mechanical realism. That balance is a big reason the character still resonates today. 6. The car's angry face was actually a deformed hood sculpted by hand. For scenes where Herbie looks furious, eyebrows dropping, front fenders looking tense, the art department sculpted a special hood with asymmetrical bulges. Under certain lighting, it created the illusion of an angry expression. The modified hood was so convincing that test audiences thought the car had animatronics. In reality, it was just a clever trick of shape paint and shadow. Only 2 angry face hoods were ever made, and one vanished after the film wrapped. 5. Herbie became a global icon before Disney realized what they created. The studio never predicted Herbie would become a worldwide sensation. After The Love Bug premiered, Volkswagen dealerships began receiving calls from customers who wanted a Herbie model complete with the 53 decals and racing stripes. Some dealers even painted used Beetles in Herbie colors just to keep up with demand. The phenomenon spread internationally from Japan to South America before Disney had a merchandising plan. What started as a modest comedy unexpectedly transformed into one of cinema's most recognizable automotive characters, proving that personality sometimes outweighs horsepower. 4 of the surviving screen-used Herbies are scattered across the globe. Out of the dozens built for the original film, only a handful are confirmed to still exist, and their histories are as chaotic as their stunts. One is owned by a private collector in New Zealand. Another sits in a museum in Germany. One was found rotting in an open yard before being painstakingly restored. A few more are rumored to be in Los Angeles storage facilities that were never properly cataloged. Because Disney kept poor records, each rediscovery becomes a detective mission. Van tracking weld pattern comparisons, engine mounts unique to stunt rigs. It's possible there are still lost Herbies sitting unnoticed in sheds, barns, or scrapyards waiting to be identified. 3 Herbies' popularity influenced how Volkswagen marketed the Beetle. Though Volkswagen had no official involvement in the film, the sudden surge of Beetle enthusiasm gave them a PR advantage they couldn't ignore. Dealers leaned into the friendly, approachable image of the car. A few unofficial brochures even highlighted the Beetle's personality, echoing the film's themes. Fans started naming their Beetles, customizing them, and treating them like companions. Volkswagen, initially uneasy with the film, later embraced the cultural wave, privately admitting that Herbie boosted sales and softened the Beetles' image during a competitive automotive era. The company never acknowledged the exact impact, but internal memos hinted it was significant. 2 Disney used Herbie for outreach charity and even employee events. Long after The Love Bug left theaters, Disney realized Herbie had become more than a character. He was a symbol of innocence and pure fun. They used surviving cars in parades, parks, children's hospitals, charity drives, and morale-boosting events for employees. Kids flocked to Herbie as if he were alive. Adults treated him like a nostalgic memory on wheels. In the late 70s, one Herbie even received a fresh repaint and appeared as a special guest during a promotional tour, drawing larger crowds than some of the actors who starred in the film. Herbie wasn't just a prop, he became a small piece of Disney magic that escaped the screen and lived in the real world. The real Herbie was nearly scrapped before filming even started. The strangest truth of all is that the car we now celebrate as Herbie, the humble 1963 Volkswagen Beetle that became a global icon, was almost thrown away before the cameras ever rolled. During early pre-production, studio mechanics pulled several used Beetles from a lot behind Disney's Burbank facilities. One of them was in such poor condition that it barely ran faded paint rust creeping along the seams, a sagging interior, and an engine that coughed like it had given up. Crew members suggested parting it out or using it as a background car destined for the scrapyard. But something about that particular Beetle made a few designers hesitate. It had a slightly crooked stance. The fenders dipped unevenly. The body had imperfections that somehow looked expressive. When the team tested it alongside cleaner, healthier Beetles, this battered one drew the most reactions. People laughed, they pointed, they smiled at it. That one wrecked unloved Beetle. The one almost junked became the primary inspiration for Herbie's entire personality. Stubborn underdog, full of quirks, and impossible not to care about. Designers based their stripe placement, number, size, and even Herbie's friendly face on the way this damaged car looked when light hit its worn fenders. Later, after being restored and repainted for filming, it performed key scenes and served as reference for the entire fleet of Herbie rigs. Ironically, the car Disney nearly scrapped became the foundational blueprint for one of cinema's most beloved automotive icons. Herbie didn't start as a star. He started as a reject, and that's exactly why audiences connected with him. He was the imperfect car that refused to disappear. When you step back and look at Herbie's story, the debates, the hidden stunt rigs, the lost cars, the unexpected global fame, it becomes clear that this wasn't just another Hollywood vehicle. Herbie was an accident of creativity, a happy collision between engineering personality and the strange magic that happens when filmmakers trust the smallest idea in the room. A modest white Beetle, a car designed to be simple, utilitarian, almost invisible, somehow became a character millions of people still remember with warmth. Not because he jumped the highest or raced the fastest or broke the most rules, but because he felt genuine. He felt alive. He felt like the underdog who never gives up even when the world tries to scrap him before the story even begins. Across decades, Herbie went from a studio experiment to a cherished icon rediscovered in barns, restored from rust, celebrated in museums hunted by collectors, and reborn again and again in sequels, remakes, parades, viral fan builds, and even charity events. For a car with no lines of dialogue, he somehow said everything. And that may be the strangest fact of all. A machine made of metal and bolts managed to connect with people more deeply than characters with entire pages of scripted emotion. Herbie reminds us that personality can come from the most unlikely places, and that sometimes the smallest star leaves the biggest impact. This has been Cars Behind the Screen, exploring the weird and wonderful life of the 1963 Volkswagen Beetle, known around the world as Herbie the Love Bug. If you enjoyed this breakdown and want more iconic vehicles explored in the same deep dive cinematic style, stick around, because the next story might be even stranger.